We are live. It is 2:08 Central Standard Time in the United States, 8:08 BST in the United Kingdom. It is the Nomad Tech Project with Sam and Joe.
Hey.
Coming to you live this first day of June. Holy shit, it's already June, folks. I mean, I don't know if as you get older, I know I've turned 50 in another month and a half, and I'm telling you, yeah, that whole like time's slow. No, time's flying, man. It's already June of the 25th year after 2000. Holy crap. This is crazy, folks. So if you're listening to the stream, fantastic. You know the assignment. If you're listening live, great. Later on, you can download the podcast, watch the YouTube channel, tell your friends, or don't. That's okay. We don't care. We're going to be here anyway. If you're paying attention, you see we have Adam Doud, who has decided to lose an hour of his life he's never getting back. And
an hour? Yeah. Wait, you didn't tell me it was an hour.
Right. Well, maybe 45 minutes. Actually, which is funny because years ago, when I was first doing podcasting, I reached out to Adam. I was talking about, like, you know, I don't know about timing and how long. And he was saying, he said 45 minutes is probably the sweet spot, 35 to 45 minutes. And I said, okay, cool. And you know what? I've tried to do that. And I guess I talk way too much. We actually hit the 45-minute mark, I think maybe once in 120 episodes.
All right. Well, you know, hey, one's better than nothing.
Right. So. And it wasn't like I was trying to disregard the advice. I thought it was fantastic, but I was like, yeah. So anyways, welcome to the show. I know it's been a couple years since we had you on, Adam, and we always appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with us. So we appreciate it.
And I like this because like left and right were like before, during, and after. It's really great. Like in terms of like beard growth, like it's really cool. We're lining up very nicely in that regard. So
absolutely. And I appreciate the fact that you were trying to get like prepared for the show, but you're like, hey, I just like literally dipped in the house in this chair like 5 minutes before the show started. So no worries. You look fantastic, sir. So how have things been with I know you're freelancing now, and that's kind of busy, and it's kind of a kind of ebbs and flows and kind of like all the things and kind of like nothing going on. So how's the freelance work been going? And how you been the last year or so?
I've been good. I've been, reasonably good. Like freelance, we're a single income household, and my freelancing income is the single. So like, if you'd asked me like 5 years ago, like, would this ever work as a full income? I don't think I would have believed you that was going to happen. But yeah, as it happened, my wife quit teaching about 1.5 years ago. And so like, it's just been me and, hey, no pressure, but no, it's been going well. I've been like, from a career standpoint, the last, I would say like 2 years have been like amazing. Like I've had bylines in publications that I never thought would be possible. I've been in Forbes, I've been in CNN, I'm doing CNET these days. Mashable's coming down the pike a little bit. Wow. So yeah, like just I've written for places that I never thought I would ever write for, which is pretty cool. And I've gone to places that I never thought I would go. Like, I owned a passport for about 8 years, and the only place I ever went with that passport was Canada. Right. And the only reason I got that passport was because we were going to do a road trip to Boston, and we just thought, just for funsies, let's go on the north side of Lake Erie through Canada, and instead of going down around the bottom of it. And that is literally the only reason I had a passport. And as it turns out, Canada, that part of Canada, very much like Wisconsin. But anyway,
really?
So yeah. Just 2-lane highway, grass and fields on both sides, and that's really it. But anyways,
that's fantastic.
But anyway, yeah. And then like in the last couple of years, they're like, oh, I've found myself in, so I
saw you in Hawaii.
Yes, I've gone to Hawaii a couple of times, which is like, Hawaii is my absolute happy place. And like, I know that's like such a stock answer. Like, if you could be anywhere. Like Hawaii though is like, it speaks to my soul. It really does.
It's a special place. It really is.
Oh, it's so lovely. You know what I think the best thing about Hawaii is? The lack of walls where you think there would normally be walls.
Ooh.
Like I'll be walking through my hotel to the elevator, and I'll get to the elevator vestibule, and it's just like open to the outdoors. Like there's just like an open, and there's no wall, because why would you ever put a wall there? It's 72 freaking degrees every day. Like, you know, and like, yeah, you tile it so that the rain doesn't mess with anything. But aside from that, like, it's just like another hotel I went to in Hawaii, like the front desk was like literally outside. Like you would go outside to the front desk because, like, why wouldn't you be outside all the time in Hawaii?
Yeah,
right. I have never been. My wife's been once or twice, and she loves Hawaii. It's one of our things to get to, but we just haven't had a chance. Luckily, you don't need a passport like when you go to Puerto Rico.
Right.
I went there a couple of years ago. You don't need a passport either. It's just getting there. So the funny thing is, Joe's from the UK. He's been to Hawaii, and I've never been. And I've been
that's pretty
in the United States my whole life. So
that's a long flight.
I was going to say. Man. Yeah, I was going to say
I got lucky though, didn't I? Really? Snapdragon took me. But yeah, it was.
But just the time and flight. I mean, I think he flew to. Would you fly to San Francisco and then took a connecting? Yeah.
I went to Seattle.
Didn't we meet in Hawaii once?
Yeah, that's where I met you. In person.
Yeah, that's what when you mentioned like you were there for Snapdragon, I'm like, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Like you see, as a freelancer, I often tell people like, freelancing is 30% writing, 60% networking and meeting people, and 10% getting ghosted. Like that's like your entire career.
And I had talked to Joe about this dynamic, and because I have never been to one of these events, and he had a chance to go, so I was kind of picking his brain. And I go, is it kind of like high school where there's these cliquey little groups of humans? Like there's like these people kind of all are kind of the premier segmented group of humans, and then you've got the mid-tier kind of AAA guys, right? And then you got the guys that are like rookie ball, probably should never really be there. Pretty much like collegiate dudes that maybe want to extend their baseball career out of high school another year, but have no chance of making the show. And they just go, I'm going to play till like 21, 22, and then I'm going to go get a real job because, like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm curious how it goes. And he said, because I said, did you see like any of these huge? And he goes, yeah, he saw Mr. Mobile. He saw him and he called him Mr. Mobile. I said, why would you call him that?
No. I called him Captain Two Phones, actually. Captain
Two Phones. Like, why did you say Mike? Hey, Mike. Dude, it's like, because
first of all,
curious how this works.
Michael, never Mike. I made that mistake once.
Oh, really? You got a little
Michael. Yeah. Just so you're aware.
I chance I'll never meet the gentleman. So, but did you what was that experience like? Because you're not exactly us. You obviously have connections. You've been in the media for quite a while. You have a lot more,
I saw Adam chilling in the hot tub.
Right.
Yeah. He was in the cool gang. He was in the cool gang.
So how does that kind of work, I guess, generally?
There are definitely groups of people that hang around together. Like that's a thing. And I wouldn't say it's cliquey. Everybody is very polite. Everybody is really, really kind of cool. So like I can tell you kind of like two stories about that. The first story is when we went to Samsung Unpacked this past January, Marquez Brownlee was there, and he does not go to these things. Like he never goes to like events like this. So I was kind of surprised because like I was waiting for the elevator, and I think like I was getting off the elevator, he was getting on the elevator, and I didn't want to be like grab, slam my hand on the elevator and be like, oh my God, hi, how are you? Like, whatever. So like, I was just like, oh, that was weird. And I kept going. And so like, we got to the venue for Samsung Unpacked, and my Forbes editor was like, oh my God, is that MKBHD? I'm like, oh yeah, that's him. And he was like far enough down the tunnel that we're not going to be like, hey, Marquette. We're not going to do that.
Right.
But he like went around. Yeah. He went around a corner and she's like, oh my God, I can't believe he's here. She was like really fangirling over him because she's a fan of his work, and cool. And then like we went to the area where we go pick up our review devices. And my Forbes editor was there. She was talking to somebody, Justin Duino, I think, from How to Geek. But anyway, she was talking to him. I walked up and joined in on their conversation. And Marquez was coming back from the area where you pick up your devices. And I'm like, Rebecca, now's your chance. Go say hi. And she's like, oh, can you introduce me? And I'm like, sure, why not? So I walked over. Now you have to understand, I do not get starstruck. Like
neither do I.
You know, I think it comes from hanging around with Michael Fisher, like very early on in my career. Like he and I worked at Pocket Now at the same time. So like we were kind of buds before he was like, I mean, he was already kind of like the face of Pocket Now at that point, but like face of Pocket Now versus Mr. Mobile, there's a slight gap there. So it's kind of like, you know, when you marry a celebrity before they're a celebrity, and like, so you don't really think about it. Anyway, so I'm kind of like that when it comes to celebrities. I'll tell you the one time I got starstruck, but that's later. Anyway, so I walk up to Marquez and I say, "Hi, Marquez. We met one time 10 years ago at a Motorola event, and that qualifies me to introduce you to Rebecca."
No, that would have laughed. Now, if that was me, I would have laughed my ass off. I would have said, then that's a great intro.
Right. And so, you know, we stood there and chatted. He's a very good guy. He's a very, you know, kind of shy, like surprisingly introverted, I would say. But yeah, he's generally a good guy. And then like, and then the other story is just kind of like a general, like at CES when you're at these like showstoppers and they're called media showcases because they're like small versions of CES where like you pack in, you know, a couple hundred journalists, a couple hundred products, and like every third booth is a bar. So like
that sounds good to me.
Yeah. I want to go there.
And this is like total social butterfly mode. Like you're supposed to be there to see the products. And for the most part, I am. Like I'll have a list of like maybe a dozen companies that I want to see. I will bash through those in the first half an hour, and then all the rest is just like walking around talking to people, like you know, and you run into the people that you normally see, like the you know, the people that are in your normal group, but you also run into like people that like, oh, you're with Wirecutter, that's great. Oh, you know, The Verge, or you know, whatever. And in those situations, I automatically shift into work mode. Like, oh, hey, it's nice to meet you. Can I write for you?
Right.
You know, and because like that's, you know, if I go to a show like CES and I don't come back with at least one new lead for writing, then I feel like I haven't really done my job that much.
Now, as a quick aside of that, was that when you were like working more in like the Pocket Now space, kind of like actually assigned and had actual like weren't freelancing, did you still have that contact kind of like, I need to at least reach out and have that? Or is it more because now you're freelancing, you kind of have to, you got to kind of have to pound the pavement, as it were. You had to kind of get in there and do the work.
Yeah, you got to hustle. Back when I was at Pocket Now, that was very much a side gig, beer money kind of thing. And I did my 2 or 3 editorials for Pocket Now a week, and then I didn't really worry about anything beyond that. When I left Pocket Now and went over to Android Authority, I got laid off from my primary job while I was at Android Authority. So that's when I'm like, oh shit, I got to make this work. I'm sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah, on the show, absolutely. Because it's like a tree in the forest. If nobody's there to hear it, you can just let it rip. It's all good. So
fair enough.
As you were, sir.
Yeah. So I'm like, oh well, oh shit, I got to make this work. And so like I was focusing. I made the mistake of like really focusing on Android Authority until about halfway through my tenure there. My one boss was just like, hey, you know, you are freelance. You're free to do with your time whatever you want. Like once you're done doing stuff for us, you know, you can go do other stuff. And I'm just like, oh, okay,
really now, okay,
yeah, that's very cool. So yeah, that's when I started reaching out to like a bunch of other, because like I'd been to a few events at that point, so like I knew people. So like that's when I started reaching out to them and be like, hey, you know, are you looking for, you know, writers and stuff like that? And then when I left Android Authority was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I'm just like, okay, well, I got to make this freelance thing work. And so that's when I really started like extending branches to like, even like, that's when you start asking like people that, you know, do you know people that are looking? And like, it's just, and I mean, and that's the thing is like, you looked on LinkedIn, and I don't want I don't want to turn your podcast into like a freelance 101 show, but
that's fine. I'm just curious because, you know, I don't have, like, I've worked for regular companies my whole life. This is really my only foray into any tech space, fun. And this to us is just me and Joe just do it just because my wife was sick of me talking about tech and shit. She's like, just go find an outlet. and go fuck off. Yeah, go fuck off somewhere, right? Right, because I don't really. Else. Yeah, because she's like an iPhone user and she doesn't care, and so just go find a way to work that out with your weird tech human, right? And so that's what it turned into. So I've never tried to leverage into it. So I'm always just fascinated because I don't have anybody I know personally who does like freelance writing or any real freelance work of any kind. Really, maybe some woodworking kind of thing where he does his own business, but really. I'm just curious, like, what the machinations of how to get all that started on your day to day. That's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, and the thing that nobody says on LinkedIn is everybody will talk about like networking on LinkedIn. Like you got to network and you got to, but nobody tells you like it's going to take you 10 years to get to a point where networking is going to get you a regular cadence of work. Like it's going to take a very long time to get you to the point. So like if this is something that you want to do, it's very doable. I'm proof that this is doable. But start now and don't expect a lot for the first 5 years. And like get on social media and have conversations. That's really, I mean, the thing that really shocks me, and I was talking to my son about this the other day, is like my whole career came from a Twitter account. Like, when I was pre-Dead Technology days, I used to have a persona called 1 Minute Cubs, which when I was dipping my toes into blogging, I didn't have a lot to say. I would have like points that I wanted to make, but I didn't have the skill to like turn that into 1,000-word blog post.
Like expound on those comments, right? Make it meaty and have a discussion based comment.
Right. Okay. So like I can look at the Cubs and be like, wow, your bullpen is terrible, but don't ask me for 1,000 words as to why the bullpen is terrible, you know? So like So my whole thing was 1 Minute Cubs. I will write blog posts that you can read in 1 minute, and go from there. And during that time, I met a bunch of people in the Cubs sphere, because you put Cubs in your username, and people will just gravitate to you. Same with White Sox, same with Cardinals. Whatever you put a sports team in your handle, people are going to show up. And so like I met like one person that I met in particular was her name is Julie DeCaro. At the time, she was a family lawyer who wrote about Cubs on the side as like just a side hustle. And she eventually translated that into like she became a writer for like a major, like a fairly major Cubs sports blog, and then she got onto radio and started like being a radio broadcaster. And I'm just like, that's really cool that you took your Twitter account and turned it into like a whole career. And so like I like that would be cool if I could do that. And here we are. So
it's funny how that it started out like more sports adjacent, but then so at that time were you like really like into tech? I guess what I say is, did you know as much about tech and phones and everything as much as the Cubs, and you just went with the Cubs because sports fans generally, right? At that time, tech really wasn't as developed as like, fandom, like basketball, baseball, hockey. You're right. So if you get into the sports thing, you can kind of know that people really kind of like, you expect the kind of Cubs suck from a Cardinals fan perspective, right? And Cardinals suck from a Cubs fan. You can tap into that more kind of visceral, emotional response about the fact that, I mean, Cardinals are like, yeah, I know the Cubs, it's a rivalry, but it's like, it's not a really rivalry if you kick their ass every year, right? It's one of those things. So you can tap into that kind of and you knew more about baseball and you can kind of get engagement that way as opposed to tech. Like, where did the tech thing kind of start to fade in?
There was absolutely no thought along those lines. It was just like, I'm a Cubs fan and I just want to write about the Cubs, and because that's what I feel like doing. And there was no I mean, I very much, I will accept the compliment that you assumed that I had the forethought to follow that train of thought. That was not 100% not the thing. No, I got into technology because I watched the WebOS keynote of CES 2009, and like that was like the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Like WebOS was like, that was like game changing, and I'm just like, holy crap, I am 100% in. And a friend of mine, the term dead technology came from I had a friend who was a staunch iPhone fanboy, and like every time I mentioned like WebOS around him, he would be like, I use dead technology. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'm going to call your bluff, and I'm going to make a Twitter account called Dead Technology. And and as it turns out, that was the one that it just kind of stuck from that point. And and here we are. So like, yeah, I started tweeting about technology because I had thoughts about WebOS, and I didn't want to spoil the waters of a Cubs account, by tweeting about WebOS. And so I just like started up a second account, and that's kind of the one that stuck these years later. Go figure.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sam, did you know something?
Go ahead.
Up?
Go ahead.
I was
going to say, I teased. Joe,
sorry. No, I was just noticing. You said how like the last 2 years have been really good. He came on the Nomad Tech project 2 years ago.
Right. That's what started it all. That's the catalyst.
No, that's 100% it. That has to be like.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I was like in this morass of professional hell, and then all of a sudden I went on their show, and then things just kind of like, yeah. That's
Adam, the next 2 years are going to be even better.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, we can only hope. But I mean, it's just interesting that, I think when you're talking to younger people or people are trying to get into this business or anything, right? If you're writing about sports, if you're sports blogging, if you're doing any writing or engagement at a freelance level, the fact that there is going to be absolutely minimal to zero, like you're going to have to slog through years and years and years. And then one day, just like we were talking about, like I was thinking more proactively about like all those things, like, and you just like, I really didn't think about it. I just kind of organically kind of moved to the thing. And you'd be surprised when you're making, and I always tell these young folks when I talk to them, it's like, you'd be surprised that life is just little micro decisions throughout your life that kind of just happen, and you don't even pay attention. And all of a sudden you get kind of, the ball kind of rolls, right? You take a pee and then it rolls down the hill and it kind of gravitates. And all of a sudden now you're, look at Marquez. I mean, he's sitting there probably making videos in his room. He's 14, 13 years old. He's just kind of riffing on it. Or somebody like Jacqueline Dallas, right? They're just kind of putting in the work and putting in the effort. And then she's like going to school and doing blogs and writing articles and engaging. And all of a sudden now it's just like, by the time you turn around, it's like, it's this thing. And it's hard to kind of, I think it's hard to kind of see the forest for the trees, right? When you're in that, you're like, you get in these days where you're like, after 6 months, a year, you're like, fuck, man, is this ever gonna, like, why do I even do this shit? You like even question your own sanity, probably. I know as we're older, we're kind of like, we're used to kind of like putting the work in, but we're younger people. I don't know if they've had that kind of life experience where they kind of go, man, I'm going to have to do this for 5 years and get like 12 users or 12 followers. And like, is this ever going to change?
Yeah. And it will. I mean, and the key is, don't do it to make money from the start. The key is, if you're going to do it because you love it and you don't care how much time you spend doing it. And really that's, and a lot of people will be like, oh, I love writing about technology, but it's not going to pay the bills. No, it won't. You need to go work in a Starbucks and write this when you get home, or make a video when you get home. You need, and that was the first, 7 years of my career. This was like a nights and weekends gig. Like I would go to my day job and get my soul sucked out of my body a little bit every day, until, and it's funny because like I never actively left any of those jobs. They just kind of like laid me off. Like, okay, you need to go now. I closed 2 different call centers in my career. I'm kind of proud of that. Because hashtag outsourcing. So like, but yeah, people would be like, you got to go. And eventually like, I just kept chugging away at this until like I knew enough people and I knew I had enough of a resume or a portfolio that I didn't necessarily need to sell myself because like I had a fairly decent body of work. And, it starts with the first blog and, a year later, you probably have, 40, 50 pieces that you've written, and you go back and you read those and you're like, oh, that was terrible, why did I ever do that? And you just learn. And like you have to be your own harshest critic, and you also have to realize that you are not always going to write the best piece that you've ever written, and sometimes you just have to ship it.
Right.
Yeah.
The best you have, and that's why and also too, it's just, well, it's like I always tell people, it's like, all the people you look at, they're accomplished, right? Either people at your company, executives, and I always tell people, there's nobody in high school who knows how to fly an F-35. Nobody knows how to fly that aircraft in high school. They decided, hey, I think this is cool. I have decent vision. Clearly, that wasn't my jam, right? When they went to school, they put the work in, they do it, and then they get hours and hours and sort, and then eventually they become that person, right? Those things are developed. Those skills are developed through trial and error and failure. And sometimes I go back and I look at some of the first podcasts I did. Well, and to be honest, they're not much better now. However, they're really terrible back then. Like my first show, I remember as with God love him. I had Viper on the show, and he decided to come on, and it was terrible. I did not have good flow. I was just not very good, and I feel bad because I can tell. And it's funny because I watch him, and this is no slight on him. I love Viper. I think he's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
However,
he never made the jump over to Threads, so I haven't heard from him in a while.
Right. But however, you can kind of tell, and again, I used to be a police officer, and I worked in counterintelligence, so I kind of got good at nonverbals and proxemics and facial. Yeah. The way people sit and respond to you, people don't notice that they give these little tells all the time. That's what makes poker players very good. I could tell that he was like, why the fuck am I in this stupid shit? This guy's terrible. And I went back and I go, you know what? And it's okay, because I have to start somewhere, right? Everybody starts at zero, right? You have to try. And me and Joe have shows where I'm just like, I sit back and I remember recording and go, oh, why do oh God. Why does anybody watch this shit? I can't imagine a human being is driving to work. Is driving to work and listen to it. And then but like to your point, it's like, you might put a piece of writing out there. And the problem is with writing, like if you hear audio, you can kind of forget about it, but writing, it's like, it's a little bit more permanent. So when you write an article, you're just like, oh, that did not land well. Plus also you have the, if you have a hot take or you have an opinion, that may not sit well years later. That might age poorly. And you're like, holy shit, did I actually put that pen to paper? Ooh, okay, well, at the end of the day, and I'm curious, how do you continue to kind of steamroll, just screw it, I go forward, or it's like, not my best day? I mean, even Albert Pujols goes 0 for 5, right? So it's like, just show up the next day, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I have editors. And I respect my editors for like reading some of like the crap that I have put out over the years. I can self-edit. I'm told that I'm fairly easy to edit, but there are still times that I will write something and my editor will come back and be like, what did you mean by that? And I'll be like, I have no idea. But
it was an off day.
Yeah. I don't know what I was saying here, but I think maybe let's just change it to this. But like at the same time, I also respect my editors enough. Like I know a lot of writers will be very possessive over what they write. Like these are my words. You're putting my name on it. If you want to change anything, I want to make sure I'm part of that decision. Whereas me, once your check clears, I don't care what you do with what I turn in. I was actually just talking to a new client the other day. I'm like, I will give you a Google Doc and a folder full of photos, and I don't care what you do with it after that. If you want to crumple it up and toss it in the garbage can, that's fine. I don't really care. And like a lot of people, I know a lot of writers that are taking very big steps to preserve what they have written. There was a thing with freelancers and Forbes and CNN and Wall Street Journal, and like all had drama with Google. And so they had to cut freelancers from their roster, and they had salaried employees go back and like rewrite a lot of the content that freelancers had done previously for them. And so like I knew a lot of freelancers were like, how do I get a copy of this before they
kind of
wipe it out? And I'm just like, I don't know. I don't really care. Like it doesn't.
Yeah, and like my business process is I pick the paid, I give it to them, and I don't give a hell what happens to it. They can turn it into it could be in wingdings for all I give a shit. I'm like, I don't really care.
Yeah. And like, I used to say like at my old jobs, like, if you want to pay me the same salary and have me sweep the floors, that's fine. I don't care. Like
I have no
that's a lot easier than answering phones for these idiots.
Right. And I guess it has to be, you have to kind of suspend a little bit of that ego and that kind of self-absorption, right? You have to kind of just realize is like, hey, I might not be the best game in town. I may not have the best take. And, and I guess the where I want to go with that is like, when you're writing for these major, like the CNN, the Forbes, obviously the engagement and the visibility is way higher, but do you find that they're easier, worse to deal with? Is there more kind of like ivory tower kind of political kind of, I mean, how does that work? Because CNN's Forbes is huge. Wall Street Journal is huge. However, because they are kind of monolithic mainstream media, they have a lot of bureaucratic systems and check marks. And have you found that to be okay to manage, easy to navigate, difficult to navigate? Like where does that sit? So obviously I want to make sure that we don't kind of make them mad. I listen to this pretty clearly.
Every outlet has baggage. So I've just, writing for an outlet is kind of like having a girlfriend, and you have to like learn their family and learn it's actually like having a girlfriend move in with you. Like all of a sudden you have to like, maybe you have to give up your favorite chair because it's, a threadbare piece of crap that you had when you were in high school, and your girlfriend wants to replace that with something else,
and your girlfriend had ex-boyfriend that did that thing she liked and you don't do that thing she liked. You're like, oh, I don't do that at all. And you're like, no, that's great. Yeah.
Or your girlfriend has an insane mom. Like it's just, it's every outlet has baggage. Like even Slash Gear, God love them. I wouldn't be where I am today without Slash Gear. They have baggage. Forbes had baggage. CNN had baggage. I'm not with Forbes and CNN anymore, by the way, because of that Google drama, but that's a totally different story that I really don't have time to get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just a question of dealing with that. And like sometimes it's just as simple as like an editor who like never replies to emails. Like, I've had those. They're frustrating, and I tell them like, all right, you don't want to reply to my email, cool, I'm going to email you every 2 days until you reply to me. And like and I've had editors be like, okay, I need that, like you do that for me. And so like I just say, remember, you wanted this. So
and you asked for it, like, here it comes.
Right. And so like I've had some editors that are like that. And for the most part, as a writer, you don't have to deal with the upper echelons worth of stuff. And often the editors are the ones that you're meeting up at these different events. And so like they're kind of in the trenches along with you. And one of the jobs as an editor, and as I have been an editor, I felt this was one of my responsibilities, was just to deal with all the crap coming downhill and just let the writers do their thing. Like, one of my key management philosophies is just let smart people do smart things. Like don't stick your nose in there. If I'm going to hire you to write a review about the Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7, you go do that. You do what you have to do. I'm going to make sure that you run the necessary tests and you hit all the right points that need to be hit, but how you hit them, I don't really care. Like just so long as you get there, and so like, fortunately, a lot of my editors have been like that, but and some, I would say like the most red tape you have to deal with is like style guides, and like we want our roundups to have this kind of format, so like you have to deal with that a little bit, but for the most part, like a lot of it is just the editor usually is the one that deals with like all the ivory tower shit, if they believe in you enough to send you a W-9 and say fill this out, you're in. So you're okay. And so like, yeah. And the nice thing about writing for like a Forbes or a CNN and having a portfolio there is that opens doors like, oh, you've written for Forbes, you're good enough to write for us, you know, that kind of thing. So
right. It's just I guess resume markers, as they just looked on the resume and say, hey, you've written for these establishments. They clearly aren't going to let like somebody like, you know, an amateur, somebody who's got so it's pretty cool. Like I said, I'm just curious, like the freelance work is just kind of like always been fascinating. I wish I really had enough energy and kind of, you know, like I said, unfortunately I work for a pretty large institution and I have a pretty solid job. So I don't have any, and I'm kind of, I'm kind of just like put your head down and just do the thing. I don't look for any kind of special flair. Like I don't really give a shit. I'm just a dude doing work for this organization, and I really like the organization, albeit other people have their various opinions. But I don't know, just making that bridge is kind of, I just do this, and if it takes off, cool. If it doesn't, it gets me a chance to talk to Joe and have a good relationship, and then have folks like you on who are more industry people that can kind of talk about it, and I can kind of live vicariously through their experiences and their stories, which I think are phenomenal. Like when you guys have your podcast, I just listen, I just go, man, it's just like, it reminds me of another world that I could kind of get to if I really had that extra gear that wanted to get there. But it's more, there's a lot of challenges there that I just don't want to do. And so I kind of just realize that it requires more, and I just go. But yeah, Adam writes great articles. I really appreciate his opinion. I also like the fact he's a little edgy and he kind of like gets into it and kind of gets a little. I love that stuff. I really have always appreciated your approach and your humor.
Authentic, isn't it?
Yeah, and it feels like if I were a dude, I would probably be worse than Adam. That's probably why I'd be persona non grata, right? They'd probably say this guy's a fucking asshole, right? But the fact that Adam can kind of get in there and kind of push it a little bit, but not like totally scorch the earth, as it were. I kind of appreciate that. It's always been something I've gravitated to.
Well, I appreciate that. And like, I try to be, you know, I mean, really when it comes down to is you just got to be fair. And, you know, there's no such thing as a perfect product. I've never given a 10. I've come real close. Like actually recently I've come really close to like, oh man,
what was that?
Yeah, I'm curious. We want to start to shift kind of. I know you just had the S25 Edge, and that's been kind of a weird, polarizing. People piss on it. People think it's great. So yeah, I mean, curious. Like, what was the device that was like knocking on the door of a 10 from Adam Doud? Holy, this is pretty impressive.
Like the OnePlus 13 is really close to a 10. Really close. Yeah, they got a lot right with that. The Amazfit. What was the watch that I did? Was it the Balance? No, I think that's an older one. What did I do? It was an Amazfit watch that was surprisingly good. Like, you know, I kind of thought like Amazfit, oh, it's like a $99 smartwatch. It's going to be like fine, but like it actually had like really decent like AI chops on it. Like it has an AI assistant like built into it, and it's able to the Amazfit Active 2. You know, and like I had like the one thing that it did that kind of really surprised me was I was having a conversation with my wife on Facebook Messenger, and my wife referenced earlier in the conversation, not in context with the conversation that we were having, but like a couple hours ago, she said like she had a headache or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so she sent me a text of some sort. And like one of the auto responses was, "That sounds good. Hope you're feeling better." And I'm just like, whoa, that's interesting. Like, because like, you know, I think she was
almost contextual. But yeah, that's pretty cool.
It was very contextual, like a lot more contextual than any auto reply that I've ever seen before. And like, obviously I didn't send that, but just the fact that I thought that maybe I might want to send it was actually kind of cool. Like that's super interesting.
That's really useful on a watch as well. Like
right. And another one that came really close to a 10 was, I would say, like the Moto Razr Ultra is very close to a 10. Like, it's really expensive compared
Right.
to what previous Moto Razors had been. But I understand kind of where they're coming from. Honestly, if Motorola had cooked the AI like for maybe another year, then maybe we're looking at another 10. But like it's funny because I've told Motorola for the last 2 or 3 years, like, focus on camera. Like, everything else you have is great. Focus on camera. Put all of your R&D towards that. And like this year, the camera on the Ultra is very, very, very good. Like remarkably good.
So on the AI chops, like what do you think that what are they kind of like? Where are the gaps in Motorola's AI? Do you think is it because you said it's a year behind, like another year to cook and kind of like marinate? Where are the gaps in their AI as far as you think?
Like kind of the whole thing.
Okay, no, I thought it was just one or two components that were like kind of just missing.
Very basics, it's like very basic AI.
Right? Yeah. The Motorola AI is very slow. So like when you ask it a question, it'll think for a long time before it answers your question. And they have kind of like this like look and talk thing where like when you have the phone up in tent mode, and I'm trying to get the camera. There we go. So when you have the phone in like tent mode, you can just like look at the phone and it'll detect that you're looking at the phone, and then you can just ask it a question, which is great, except when you think about like what situations you'd want to do that in, and most of them, at least for me, are when I'm sitting at my desk. Well, the problem is when I'm sitting at my desk, I put my phone in tent mode in front of me, but I'm always looking at the computer screen, so the phone always thinks I'm looking at it, and it's just like, beep, what do you want? Beep, what do you want? Beep, what do you want? It's just like, it's like a jack.
Shut up, quit nagging me, you damn thing.
Right? And so it's like, well, maybe I could like put it over here, but then like, then it's kind of like it's out of sight, out of mind. You like kind of forget that it's there. So
right. And then, especially if you're working, then you have to like completely turn and like totally turn to engage the thing. And it's like, it like, there's no hat. It's either it's nagging me every day because I'm looking at it, or it's way over here. And all of a sudden it becomes object permanence and I don't see it anymore. And it's just gone.
Yeah, right. And I mean, like, that's the whole point of an activation keyword is to like, I have a thing that I want to ask you, and I guess I don't know. I guess maybe people just don't want to say OKG or like hey S or whatever. But like how hard is that really?
I wonder if you can switch it in the settings at all, so that it doesn't.
I'm sorry. No. I mean, you can absolutely turn that off. You don't have to turn on look and talk, but it's just like that was kind of like one of the big things. And
it's a shame to turn such a
That's like one of those things where you're like at the preview and you're like, oh, that sounds really good. That's really cool. And then like you set it up and it's like, oh, that's not.
Oh, it's annoying.
Cool as I thought it was going to be.
The one good thing about the Moto, it seemed like the flips are kind of getting like became, the Moto is really kind of done. I think Moto, and I'm going to say this with the full clarification that I'm kind of a Moto person, right? Sure. But I think as far as any other flips go, like I haven't had a chance to really touch any of the Chinese made flips because they're just not available. And even if they were, I can't use them on AT&T, which is on the whitelist, so I don't even bother. But how do you see the foldable, flippable market? Because it seems like all the energy is kind of starting to transition to the flippables, like with the Motos and possibly, and then. Yeah. But the foldable markets, I think it's kind of stalled a little bit. I don't think it has the same level of engagement as it were, especially on the Apple side, because they were in the United States, and the 18 to 24 market. I tell people, I think that the statistic was 84 or 80, almost 80% of users between high school age and 24 are on iPhone. Right, they're on iOS.
Yeah.
And so
my kids are among those demographics.
Yeah, and mine too. Except my one daughter, she has gone the way of Android, right? So, but and obviously Apple is not really in the foldable, flippable market yet. So, like, how do you see that looking for that market? Because you got Moto really kind of bringing the flippable market. Google does not have a flippable, which I still think is a criminal oversight. I think if they had a Pixel Flip, I think that would get a little bit more traction probably than a Fold, especially if the price was a little bit more in the 11 to $10.99 market. How do you see the foldable, flippable market really looking, especially obviously if Apple gets in the game, it disrupts this whole paradigm, right?
Yeah.
How does that look in the next 3 to 5 as far as the flippable, foldable? Or do you think that's just a fad and we're going to go back to slabs and then we'll wait for the next form factor that comes out?
It's really interesting because there's a few different ways that this can go. I'll address your first question about the foldable market specifically. Then maybe we can talk a little bit more nebulous about like the next big thing. But so Motorola has, I think, damn near perfected the flip at this point. Like, even like the one thing that Samsung had over Motorola was like build quality, because Samsung had built like 6 generations of these things, and Motorola was like kind of like 4.5-ish generations. But this year, with the redesigned hinge on the Moto Razr, like all the Razrs have the same hinge mechanism, it is rock solid. Like in the past, there was always like a little bit of wiggle, like side to side. This thing,
or when I had my old my 23, it's every once in a while you get a halfway through the mechanism and you have a little I don't want to say cracking sound. You could just feel that it didn't feel as smooth, nowhere near as smooth as my Duo, essentially.
Yeah,
right?
but what I'm referring to is like the lateral movement, like between the two halves. There's just not a lot. Like and in previous years there was. So like build quality is really an area that has caught up. Motorola also mentioned during their, I don't remember the exact number, but I think they said that Motorola's flip business had increased by like 70% year over year or something like that. Like flip phones were a very big market driver for Motorola over the last year. So I think and then add to that a sequence of issues with the OnePlus did not launch a OnePlus Open 2 basically. So we're like about a year and a half removed from the OnePlus Open. It was not last fall, it was the fall before, right?
Yeah,
right. We're almost out like that Surface Duo cadence, right? Wasn't next year, it was like 18 to 24 month cadence, right? Yeah,
right.
And really, I don't even know if we're really getting the 2. It hasn't really been 100% confirmed. So
I don't know. But Oppo has the Find N. What is it? The Find N2 this year. It's their sequel to the foldable, and it's like ridiculously thin and awesome, and like everything that a OnePlus foldable phone should be. But anyway, so we're not getting that. Google, the Pixel Fold last year, the Pixel 9 Pro Fold was how they changed the name. Was arguably the best foldable you could buy. Samsung has been sitting on its laurels in terms of book style foldables for 3 years now, give or take. Like, so like I think in between the fact that flips are so popular and book style foldables are not getting refreshed like they necessarily maybe should be, and the companies that are refreshing them aren't necessarily, Samsung. Okay, I'm just going to name it. Samsung hasn't really driven a lot of innovation in this particular field, and the fact that the price hasn't come down to a point where I think people would want to consider it a lot more than you can. Find N5. That's what it was. Thank you. Thank you, Joshua W. So I think like just the pricing is a problem. The crease is still a problem. And I think if you ask me, the crease is 100% the reason why Apple hasn't developed a foldable yet. I think Apple will get rid of the crease before it does a foldable. That's kind of what my gut feeling says. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see what Google does with the Pixel 10 Fold, Pixel 10 Pro Fold this year. Hopefully Google will do something with it, and hopefully the price will be a little bit more accessible. I think like Samsung is focusing on what it does well, which, fine, fair game. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Whereas I think that like the OnePlus and Google, at least in the American market, have been focusing on perfecting their version of it And now that we're there, it's going to be a question of seeing like whether they are willing to bring more evolutions to that.
Yeah, push it, I guess, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as like what's next, I don't think it's foldables. It might be smart glasses. And like that was kind of a big theme at CES. And I've used a couple sets of smart glasses, and yeah, they're making a good point. Like some of these things that smart glasses can do are pretty impressive. I'm kind of still like, my big thing with smart glasses is just being able to like put a computer screen or a movie screen like anywhere you want it to be. Like if you ask me, like the perfect travel combination is a Samsung phone with DeX and a set of smart glasses that can project the screen anywhere you want it to go. And like I'm pretty much in a happy place at that point. Like I kind of wish that I could get like more than one monitor in a Samsung DeX situation, because I have kind of a 2-monitor workflow. But yeah, I get a lot more work done on airplanes now that I have smart glasses and Samsung.
So yeah, and have you had a chance? I know Dex. You mentioned Dex, but have you had a chance to use the well, I call it Ready for, but the Motorola Connect? Do you think can that be something that really are American consumers really going to like? I'm not thinking about Android people because they don't really engage it here, but there's a chance. But can you imagine like if this ever transitions to like an Apple glasses, right? An eyeglasses, whatever you want to call it, right? Do you think that I'm going to be kind of a jerk here. So most of the time that I talk to people who have iPhones, usually I know, right? I'm not that guy, right? But it seems like when I talk to most Apple people, like they're not conceptualizing glasses and foldables. Like I have my iPhone, it does the thing, it works great. I have iMessage and it connects to my Mac, and I don't give a shit. Right? I can AirDrop and it's all good, right? And then also just the style, right? Oh, I have an iPhone and I'm bougie and I got a cute little cat case, and then I'm good, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of those things where I've always told people, if you want foldables and flippables to be mainstream, give it to Apple. If they make one, that's the good housekeeping seal of approval of any tech, right? Once they do it, then it's like, oh my God, do you understand that Apple make glasses? I'm like, we have Meta Ray-Bans and shit. Every Google person goes, or Android goes, yeah, no shit. Like, duh. They're like, oh my God, they've had this. But do you think that has any weight to, like, I have never tried the Meta Ray-Bans. I know Joe has, but I think is it opening Apple's eyes to like look at all these other form factors, be able to cast screens, Samsung DeX, glasses. I know you already have the wearable thing with the Apple Watch. That's already locked in, right? But other things like what you're doing that maybe not be consumer focused, more productivity adjacent, I guess. How does Apple like bridge the gap? But it's going to be like, we're just going to wait till all these guys do it, and then we're just going to come in and lay waste to all that shit, and we're just going to have glasses and our Ready for component, and we're just going to crush all these assholes, right? We're just going to smash iOS. We're going to smash Android in the US completely, and that's going to be the death knell of all.
I mean, that's Apple's MO. It always has been. Like Apple is very rarely first to the party, but they always bring the best dish. Like, the
potluck. That's like, oh, that's that good dish you make. That's like everybody wants. It's the good potato salad,
right? Which is why the Apple Vision Pro surprised me as much as it did. Now, cards on the table, I have never put an Apple Vision Pro on my face. Okay. I never went to go to a store to do a demo. I never did any of that. But just the fact that they priced it so high, and the reason it was priced so high was because they did a lot of extra stuff that you really didn't have to do. Do I need to see your eyes on the outside of the thing?
That was creepy. I don't
think I do. But at the same time, Apple did a lot of really cool stuff that the MetaQuest Pro doesn't quite do quite as well. And that's what Apple does, is Apple takes this really cool thing and says, okay, how can we Apple it? How can we make this miles better than the competition? What mistakes have they made that we can avoid? What are people talking about that we can make better? And what Apple does. Apple is not an innovator. Apple's kind of like me. I very rarely have good ideas, but if you give me an idea, I can plus it up.
It's like they're like a refiner, right? A refiner.
They're a refiner. Apple is a refiner, and you know what? That's great. Like, and it's because of that just about everything Apple does is gold. Like,
right.
And
even if they make the Apple Vision Pro and don't sell a lot of units, and it would be most companies that would be kind of a real gut punch. They can kind of just shrug it off and go, well, it was, and they can say, well, it was $3,500 because really it's a prototype experimental development device. It really wasn't meant for the mainstream. You guys just bought it, and that's cool. But we really didn't mean that for the mainstream. That was kind of just for devs and people to get firsthand early adopters.
Yeah,
so they can kind of,
but that's
deflect.
That's not Apple. Apple doesn't do dev stuff. If Apple's releasing a product, it's a product that's ready to go. Unless, of course, we're talking about Apple Intelligence, which is a different conversation. But that was one of the things that I liked about OnePlus up until this year was, I believe Allison Johnson from The Verge said this on Miriam's podcast. Like, the OnePlus 12 was just a phone-ass phone. Like, it didn't have any like really fancy AI stuff to it. It didn't really, I mean, and that was really like the big thing is like OnePlus is getting into AI this year, which is, fine. But like the one thing I liked about OnePlus phones is I didn't have to worry about AI junk.
I loved the OnePlus 12. Really good device.
Yeah. And again, the OnePlus 13 is a remarkable achievement. But yeah, so like, what were we talking about?
And it's funny. Well, that's okay because Michael making this comment. He goes, the biggest thing about and keeps talking about the OnePlus 3 is the OnePlus 12 is just already so good. Like, it was just like a banger phone. And if you're one of those people that just want a kick-ass phone and don't want all this AI, like if you either don't want or think the AI thing is a little bit kind of like, okay, that's a bridge too far for me at this point. The OnePlus 12 was such a solid phone. And it's just a shame that the thing with T-Mobile and bringing OnePlus into the U.S. market and getting into carriers, it just didn't get traction. And it just, and I don't know if it has to do, and the fact that I don't think Americans understand Huawei is like China. It just sucks. We make them. It's great, right? They don't think OnePlus and Vivo, like they don't think about it that way. And it's like the fact that I thought it was great that T-Mobile kind of tried to bring OnePlus and kind of get it as another Android, kind of get it in there, and it just did not take off because I think for the U.S. market in the Android space, I think OnePlus would be such a banger. I mean, everything about it. I mean, I've got a OnePlus tablet. I've had OnePlus phones. It's such a great Android, non-Samsung-y, non-Pixel-y alternative. And they're really just every OnePlus I've ever had has been fantastic.
I love their watch.
Their
watch
is
and their watch is
amazing.
Right. Yeah, and it's just such a shame. And I just hate the fact that really in the Android, and my argument is still, I think at some point in the US market, I think Android just dies at some point. I just think it just eventually you'll have, I think you'll get to you'll have the Samsung. You'll have the outliers. But I think at some point, it's going to be Apple in the US, which is a shame because I just really wish we had a lot more also form factors. And so I'm kind of hoping that Apple
don't discount Pixels though, because like anecdotally speaking, I have seen a lot of Pixels in the wild recently. Like,
I got mine.
Both of my kids graduated this year, so we went to like a lot of graduations and like graduation ceremonies, graduation parties, and I see a lot of people toting around Pixels, and I'm just like, all right, I see you.
Yeah, I'm feeling you. Like, like I said, I have my 9 Pro XL, and I tell you, I love Motorola, so don't get me wrong, but I'm telling you, when I put my phone in a Moto, like the Now Playing and the call screening and the Gemini, and especially on the call and text front, it's so much nicer. Like when I get a phone call and I'm like, I don't recognize this number, and just go to screen, and all of a sudden it's like, if it's a legit place, they go, hey, you can see their text. It's like, hi, I'm calling from your doctor's office. We're just calling from a different number. Okay, cool. And you can let it through, or they just hang up, right? Every time I use my Pixel phone, my spam and spam text and spam calling almost totally ceases. But on any other device, it's just like the floodgates open, and part of the reason why I come back to the Pixel is it just
you shoved Android 16 on it yet?
Oh yeah, I've got to. Yeah, I actually, and I know that Sam. I think Sam Beckman is kind of one. He says I don't really like the fact that it's kind of like, I'm kind of digging this. Like I'm kind of digging on the Material 3. I'm kind of feeling it.
I quite like it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's pretty sharp. I like the transitions and animations are pretty nice. I like. Yeah, I get that. I think it's that's not.
You know what really. You know what really ups your Pixel 9 Pro is the Clicks keyboard that you can get.
Oh man, I need to get one.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely.
Nice.
So as a person, I've seen them actually the other day. I think I went by a Best Buy. They had an end cap, a kiosk that had. It was. I think although to be fair, I think it was only for the iPhones. I didn't take a closer look.
Did you hear that this year? When the Moto Razr came out, when the Moto Razr Ultra came out, Best Buy was doing a promotion where if you bought a Moto Razr, you got a Clicks keyboard with it for free.
That's what I heard too. So how's your experience with the Clicks? I know, and to be fair, I know it's Michael Fisher's product, so I realize that he has a vested interest, and I know you guys are friends, but like using it.
I will happily shit on his project. That's not the problem at all.
Yeah, like you said, but I mean, you've used it. Like, what do you? I mean, is the fact that there's? I'm just more curious. Like with the Razr, it makes sense because you have it folded and it really kind of lands in a perfect spot. But with these like Pro XLs. I don't know how would it be functional with the extra real estate as far as the length. How's your experience been with the Clicks overall? I mean, positive. I'm assuming it's not been totally.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So now I just got the Clicks keyboard for the Pixel. Like I want to say it came on Friday, so it's only been a couple of days, and in that time I've been focusing on the S25 Edge, because I have a review of that coming next week. That being said, the Clicks keyboard. Not for me. And that's fine. That is perfectly fine. Like I like it, but probably not enough to put it on my phone forever. That being said, it's rare that a 2.0 version of a product will address every problem that I had with the 1.0 product. Okay. The really cool thing about the Clicks keyboard is okay. When you are using a Clicks keyboard, one of the big selling points is you have a lot more screen real estate to work with because you don't have a virtual keyboard popping up and
occluding
and not only that, but when a virtual keyboard pops up, it moves the UI around too.
Yeah.
Because your caption above your puppy on Instagram is going to be like another inch higher because it has to account for the space of the keyboard. And then when you make the keyboard go away, it moves back down. You're like, oh, well, that's not where I want that text. Now you have to drag it around. So one of the nice things about the Clicks keyboard is if you are a content creator, everything on your screen stays where it needs to be so that it's a lot easier to make.
There's no compression and reformatting of the UI. It kind of it's uniform. Yeah, okay, yeah,
exactly. The other thing that the Clicks 2.0 did, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but the keys are canted outwards. Yeah. So so the keys on this side are the keys on from here over are face that way, and from here over face that way.
So right aligned and left aligned. Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So as you're typing with your camera, as you're typing with your thumbs, you have a little bit more space to press because they're tilted just slightly. So you
it's not totally flat. You almost get more of like an angled. You almost that's cool.
The keys kind of catch your thumbs as you're going to push the button. So that was a really smart design decision. I'm really glad they did that. And then the other thing that they did was they made the enter key over here a little bit smaller. On the original, do I have it somewhere relatively accessible? No, I sure don't. On the original, the enter key was actually it was too this way. I can't do things backwards. It took up this spot and this spot. So every time I tried to press an L, I would send a text message that was half written.
Oh, that would be frustrating. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing with Michael Fisher, because he is really engaged in feedback and kind of is a reviewer, he'll be a lot more responsive to like, hey, I heard from people, they said, yeah, like you're it's just like every time I hit return, I fucking send a text message because I'm hitting L and I'm like sending messages and it's frustrating as shit.
Right.
The fact that other people probably ran into that same feedback, the fact that they were like, okay, let's leverage that feedback and try to make these adjustments hardware wise is pretty good.
And then the other thing that they added was MagSafe. So, because the original one didn't have MagSafe, it didn't necessarily break MagSafe, but it wasn't nearly as it wouldn't connect nearly as strong as it would without the case or with a MagSafe case. So they added that to these versions of the cases, which is very nice. I actually got out my iPhone Clicks case somewhere. I don't know. Oh, here it is. So like I had for a hot minute, I had an iPhone and a Pixel, both rocking a Clicks case, which was not very pocket friendly. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But
exactly. Yeah, but I think if you have like maybe the smaller 16, it's probably not. Oh yeah, that's a lot going on. There's a lot of business going on there. That's part of the part.
This is a 16 Pro Max. This is a big freaking phone once you add a to the bottom of it. But it's
absolutely. And I know you have the review coming out next week, but I mean, I don't want to spoil it for anybody. So, but on the Edge, like we had a conversation. We're like, hey, basically, if you think it's a garbage phone, it's way too priced, just don't buy the thing, and that's how you tell Samsung that it's not going to win. But I've seen some pretty positive feedback, other than the fact that some of the hardware considerations. But a lot of people are a lot more positive about the phone than I thought maybe would be.
My wife actually really likes this phone, and the reason is because it's not. So she's currently on a S23 Ultra. And she cannot reach the opposite end of the screen with her thumb with the S24 Ultra, but she can with this. And so she's like, I really like the fact that I can just reach anywhere I want on the screen without like having to like do the hand gymnastics that you have to do. Right. But it feels weird, but in a good way. Like it's so thin, like, and yet it's still a 6.7 inch screen. Like it feels really good, and the battery life hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be. Like yesterday was, I just got this phone in on Friday, so still kind of honeymoon period a little bit. But yesterday I was working out in the yard for several hours, listening to a Cubs game, streaming, through Bluetooth, and I did some reading on the phone, like various. Oh, the Cubs are winning. Yay. So I did a lot of reading on the phone, like when I was running my, daughter to doing errands and stuff like that. So, that's fun. So the pinned score that Samsung gives you now, so that like you can get the pinned, that one says something different than the MLB. Like you can see, one of them says 2 to 5. Or the one of them says 5 to 2. The other one says 5 to 0. So I don't know what's going on there. But
well, I can tell you the Cubs are winning 5-2 in the top of the 7th. So there you go. So I have
technology. Anyway,
yeah. And the Cardinals got their ass kicked again. They had a ref break with the Rangers. That's okay. That's fine.
That's good. Anyway,
and that's okay. And the Cubs and the Cardinals, well, they're at the top of the NL Central. So this is one of those years where I think it's going to be another one of those really good years where the Cubs are good, the Cardinals are getting better, so maybe they'll have a good run. It'd be kind of fun, better than Milwaukee.
Maybe, sure. But anyway, so yeah, I would say like it feels weird, but in a good way. Like it's
it's really thin. Like I said, I know Adams Matlack's wife really was like made a comment about, man, like if I was coming off an iPhone like this, I think this would be the jam. Like I think this is really. It seems like and I hate to say it because I don't want to be gender specific about it, but it seems like a lot of women, the thinness of the phones, people who have iPhones or people who like the thinner phones or have smaller hands, really kind of like the thinness and the more not bulkiness of a Samsung Ultra.
But at the same time, in terms of design choices, like, come on, Samsung.
I mean, we're gonna really? Chase along. Hey, we put the flash in the housing, not to the side, so it's not totally the same. Yeah, right.
I know, totally, but yeah.
Well, I will tell you one thing is there's been times where I look at the people like have the Edge and the 16, like that. I'm like, I can't really tell the difference if you look at it as closely because of the camera housing being so unique, and that's another reason why I like Pixel phones because as far as this camera housing, it's immediately identifiable as a Pixel. Like nobody,
right?
It doesn't, or like if you had a OnePlus, the circular housing. The problem is when you're looking at phones, and I kind of do when I'm out in public. That's kind of the telltale sign, and I think some of these homogenizations of design are kind of like, it sucks a little bit.
The nice thing is, if you have an S25 Plus, you already have a case for the S25 Edge.
There you go.
It does. Yeah. It doesn't exactly work, but it's close. But no, I think actually, I think my favorite part about the S25 Edge is the fact that, despite the fact that it is this thin, they still have wireless charging and they still have an under-screen fingerprint sensor. So that's really kind of cool because, like, that's one of those things. Like in the past, I have had brands tell me we didn't put in wireless charging because it would make the phone too thick. Right.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Bullshit. Excuse me.
That's what she said, right? Yeah, it makes it too thick. Sure. That's what you say.
Yeah. So this definitively answers that question. Like, no, you can still have a thin phone and have wireless charging.
Quite easy.
But anyway, I never finished my thought. So yesterday I was like out in the yard and streaming Cubs game and working out in the yard a bunch and did a bunch of reading, and I still went to bed with like 45% in the tank. So like,
okay,
it was surprisingly like not bad. So yeah. Like,
was that on Wi-Fi though? Or?
It was on Wi-Fi. So
today.
Today the phone's been out away from Wi-Fi for about an hour, and I was doing some streaming while that. And then actually, after I'm done here, I think my daughter and I are gonna go hit up my my favorite Great America, my favorite theme park, Great America. Do some work there, take some photos and stuff. So we'll see how the phone reacts to that with the back half of the day away from Wi-Fi and shooting a lot of videos and photos and stuff. So today will be, I think, a harder test on the phone than yesterday was. But even so, yesterday it did pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I'm curious to look in and realize that, folks, if you are paying attention, he will have hopefully review in the next week or so, and check that out. And like I said, I have to admit, I'm not going to fanboy over here, but I'm a huge fan of your content. I've always enjoyed, and that's why when I reach out to you, I said, hey, I realize that you're very busy, and so for you just to take any time to spend with us, it's really awesome. So thank you so much for taking your time.
It's busy. It's not the fact that I'm busy. It's the fact that you reached out on Twitter, and I just don't do that anymore.
Right, and that's another thing too, because you start using these reach. It's like I try not to email folks because I have emailed some other people to reach out, and then just they don't respond because people are busy, and I get it. They're not. I mean, what? You're not waiting for my email? Whatever, right? So, and then some people have migrated to Threads or Twitter or Instagram or off or both or neither, and it's like so I just reached out and you said, hey, just use on Instagram. I'm like, well, cool, I can totally do that. So,
yep. Yeah, well, for the record, I try to reply to every email I receive because as a freelance advocate, I am also a job searching advocate because freelancers are always looking for jobs. But like, I also talk to a lot of people on LinkedIn who are like, freelancing because they haven't found their next permanent thing yet. But one of the big issues with job searching these days is just 100% being ghosted. And so like, because of that, like not because I don't want to do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. I try to reply to every single email that I receive, even if it's to say, I'm going to pass on this, but thanks. I try to do that. So I'm not always successful at it, but if you wanted to email me to come onto the show, I would definitely reply to you.
Absolutely. So we thank you very much. And like, so what do you got going on? I mean, as far as, I guess we're starting to get into that, I guess, busy season, right? We all the WWDC and all that kind of stuff going on. So, any new stuff you can share as far as like any other outlets or stuff you're working on? I realize that you have to be kind of careful about, those kind of things. So.
Yeah, no. So these days I am working I'm doing my primary work on like Slash Gear, Laptop Mag, CNET, and of course, Benefit of the Doud, youtube.com/benefit of a Doud, youtube.com/benefit of a Doud. Repetition works. But anyway, so yeah, that's where my primary work is going. Signing on to a couple of new outlets soon. But again, baggage. So we're kind of negotiating that baggage as we speak. But yeah, so like that's primarily where you're going to find me. Dead Technology on Threads and Instagram. You're always welcome to slide into my DMs. I don't always answer DMs though. So like if you email me, I'll answer you. DMs, different conversation. You can also, you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm very prolific on LinkedIn, talking about like what it's like to be a freelancer, how to, I don't know. See, I don't want to say how to be a better freelancer because that kind of implies that what I'm doing is better than what other people are doing. But how to freelance like me, I guess, if you want.
It kind of is a little bit.
I love what you wrote about utilizing your local library. I thought that was excellent.
Yeah, actually, that's where
your
I was
library
coming
sounds
from when
awesome.
I was. My library is pretty awesome, but actually, that's where I was
amazing.
coming from when I walked in the door 5 minutes before this podcast.
Oh, okay.
I was doing product photography at my library, and then just for funsies, I shot a hyperlapse on the Galaxy S25 Edge on my bike. Not home, but to like my local Target, from my library to my local Target. I did a hyperlapse of that, so I'm probably going to toss that on Instagram or something. But yeah. Absolutely. So if you want to know where I write, /Gear Laptop Magazine at, just go to muckrack.com and search Adam Doud there. You can get all my stuff there. And Freelancing Thoughts on LinkedIn, and I have a YouTube channel because who doesn't? Benefit of a doubt. So
I mean, hell, we do. That goes to show. Right. We're just a bunch of dudes, right? Yeah, it's all good. Right. So we'll make sure we'll put all those links in the chat so folks can actually link to all that. And then if most of the people probably who watch the show are probably very dialed in, they're already big fans. And if you're not, fucking shame on you because you're missing out. Adam brings the noise and he brings the fun.
Amazing. I am
not. And humble as fuck. Anyway,
my God. Humility is one of my many, many fine qualities.
Absolutely. So it's all good. So again, Adam, thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us. We always enjoy having you come on. And again, huge fans, Joe and I. And maybe we can do it again sometime and catch up with you when you have a little bit more time and see how things are going in the later part of the year or maybe early next year.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And, give me a shout anytime. I will be happy to come on and say hi.
Yeah, because I had a few questions, but we'll do them another time.
Yeah.
Oh, I got nowhere to go.
Yeah, it's okay. What do you got, Joe? Let's go.
What are you
lightning round?
Yeah. What are you most looking forward to back end of this year? Is there any one product that you're looking forward to?
I want to see what Google does with the Fold. I want to see what the next generation of the Fold looks like. I'm interested to see if Apple does a slim version of the phone, because a lot of the scuttlebutt suggests that the only reason Samsung did a S25 Edge was to beat Apple to the punch.
Yeah, that's what I heard too. What do you think? Does that have merit, or you think it's just a fact pattern that fits?
I don't know. Like it just I don't know why Apple would. Like, I guess they want to have like thin and light, and I guess that's a thing that Apple's going for, but I don't know. Yeah, it probably just seems weird to Apple, like that all of their phones are thicker than their iPad Airs. So maybe that's why. But yeah, let's see. End of the year. What else? I want to see some more smart glasses. I want to see some more smart glasses come out and do some cool stuff. I will be at IFA at the end of the year.
Very nice.
In September. So that I got that call this week.
Cool.
I want to see. I'm also interested to see I've been pleasantly surprised by some of the mid-range phones that I've used this year. Some of the mid-range phones have been surprisingly good. And as someone who spends most of his time playing with flagships, finding a solid mid-ranger is always a fun surprise. So I'd like to see if there's any more of those coming down the pipe. Maybe like a Pixel 10, which isn't a mid-ranger. That's flagshipy, but it's not like the Ultra or the Pros or anything like that. Right. So yeah. So and I'm interested to see how Snapdragon is going to build on the 8 Elite.
Yeah, that will be interesting. Yeah.
So that's gonna be because, like, honestly, that angle lead is pretty damn good already. So like, I'm kind of curious as to see what the next generation of that's gonna be.
Yeah, that will be interesting.
So,
now I'm going to bounce around a bit because going back to
Okay.
Moto with the ultras, I love all the
Alright.
finishes. They're all
Okay.
brilliant. What finish did you like best? Have you seen them all?
So I've seen them all. I liked I think it was called Cobalt Red.
Yes.
No.
That's the faux level one.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so I asked for that one and I ended up getting the magenta one. So like,
okay.
but that was because like Motorola had like kind of two different reds in the Ultra and I got them confused. And so like when I originally asked for one, I asked for this one first and I'm like, no, wait, I want the other one. I think it was Rio Red.
Rio, yeah, that's it actually. Yeah.
And I'm like, I want the other one. And they're like, okay, yeah, no problem. And then they sent me this one, which is fine. I'm man enough to use a pink phone. I don't mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels nice. The back of that feels really smooth.
I like the wood finish, but at the same time, it was a little bit too slippery for me.
Yeah, so, and that's like, what people said, that the wood is a little slippery. And I actually made the comment. I said, I'm wondering if it is a solid wood back, in order to get the slipperiness, if you can get like a really low grit sandpaper and kind of just kind of scuff it up just a bit to give it some texture. I'm wondering if you could kind of scuff it up a little bit just to kind of give it a little bit more of the gripsies. So that's what I'm saying.
I will never be mad about a phone I can take a belt sander to. So
that's what I'm saying. And also, I know a lot of people really seem like they like the wood, but it was slippery. It seemed like everybody really likes the Alcantara. They really are digging that.
Yeah. I'd make that wood darker though as well. I'd put a stain on it. And
yeah, you can stain it. You can stain it. You can actually go ahead and grit sandpaper a little bit. Belt sander. If you're going to like add just like he's in. And then maybe like a little bit of a stain. Yeah, a little bit of Thompson's. Or fuck it, right? You're in.
Paint it yellow.
Yeah.
You can paint it yellow. Why not?
You can stain it, right? And you get a little, like a little Thompson's water seal. Hell with it. Add a little bit of IPs to it. It'll be great.
I don't want to take too much more of your time, so I'll ask one more question.
You're fine. Take your time.
If you're going to give one piece of advice to someone who's starting out freelancing, one little nugget, and that's a big question.
Other than keep plowing through, like, is there any other? You realize you're going to be broke for a while, kind of thing. Like, what else can you think would be really kind of give them some good sage advice from a vet? As it were.
Read through my LinkedIn feed. That would probably be my best advice. No, talk to everybody. Like, and when I say talk to everybody, I don't mean sending them a random message on Threads saying, what do you think about the Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge? No, you want to have meaningful conversations with people that are in the industry. And maybe it's putting your opinion out there. Maybe it's, hey, I saw your review about the S25 Edge and I disagree about this one point. Start a conversation like that. Start a meaningful conversation that isn't just like, hi, how are you? And, have an opinion, have facts that back it up. And eventually, 9 times out of 10, maybe they won't reply. And that's fine. But just keep replying and keep attempting those meaningful conversations, because that's what's going to eventually get the name recognition that you need, so that people might start paying attention to you, to be honest. Like, and that's really, that's the one thing that I see a lot of people, like, especially when they like reach out to me, they will say, I like via text, I don't do small talk. If you want to text me for some reason, don't ask me about the weather. Don't ask me like, oh, hey, I saw you're in New York. How is it? Like, that means nothing to me. Right. And you will not, like, I'm a dude. Like, if we're communicating by text, you better have something to say.
Right. You got a couple of moments, just make those moments count. Right.
Exactly. And so like, if you're going to engage with somebody who is in this industry, just make sure that it's meaningful and make sure that there's substance to it, because if there's no substance to it, you're not going to gain any traction. You're not going to gain any notability or name recognition or anything like that. So like if you're going to reach out, but like I said, a lot of the that's the one thing that I get a lot of people reaching out be like, you know, oh hey, I like you, I like what you write.
Cheers.
Cool. A lot of people do. That's why people pay me. Like,
right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Right.
But is there something else you're bringing that makes me go, what makes your conversation or your inquiry stand out to me to want to further an engagement?
First impressions are important, right? So you only get one chance to do that.
You have to do, and also you have to understand is when Adam maybe reads those is he clearly reads that anybody could write that message. The fact that when if somebody else reaches out to him and has a little bit more substance, that means they're one trying to understand, even if they're not an industry insider, right? They're trying to understand and done some legwork. And also too is sometimes it's like you don't always want to have confirmation, but it's like, well, yeah, everything you said was 100% correct. And it's like, well, then if that's the case, then we don't have to have a reason to discuess anything,
right?
Because if you're coming to me with 100% right, then
thank you very much.
I crush all this shit, and it's like, yeah, now like I know, like I get it. I'm him, right? I'm the main character energy, right? I get it. But if you could say, hey, you know, when you made a comment about this such, I have a different take on it. Would you be interested in have a dialogue and maybe hear my point? And I'll present that point to you and think if it has merit, right?
Right.
And it doesn't. And if it doesn't,
don't even ask that question. Just here's my thing. Like,
right. Just let it fly, right?
And the answer to do you want to hear my opinion will be in whether or not I reply to you in the first place. You know,
right? Exactly.
And again, I don't mean me. I mean, like, I'm talking about if you want to reach out to Marquez Brownlee or Michael Fisher or, you know, anybody who's in this industry, just picking names, Ray Wong, you know, I'm trying to
Unlocker, all those guys,
Unlocker. You know, just if you're going to reach out to them, have some substance. Really, that's the best thing that you can do. And especially if you're starting from scratch, you know, one of the key things about being a freelancer is never work for free. So if you have a blog where somebody is like looking for contributors that they can't pay you, that's fine. It doesn't always have to be money, but there has to be something in it for you. Right. As like, don't give other people content unless you are getting something back for it. And, you know, something preferably that you could pay your rent with. You know,
there has to be a value proposition, essentially.
Like, hey, we'll send you a phone that you can keep after you review it. You know, that's nice. You know, you don't have to spend your money on other phones. So like, that is some form of compensation. You know, just don't write for free. I mean, that's really the most important thing. And even when you're starting out, if you don't write for much, fine, but don't write for free. Like,
like I said, there has to be some kind of value proposition, at least for you.
Right.
Like you have to at least have something that at least either gets you exposure, food on the table, rent would be preferable, a phone's okay, but something that we're just not basically donating anything. What does I always say is never do something for free when you can get paid to do that thing, right? Even if you're brand new, because your time is valuable, even if you're starting out, and if you're bringing a lot of good energy, a lot of good thoughts, and really kind of, you know, and bringing some talent. Hey man, why not start out?
And I'm not sure exactly when it happens, but you come to a point in your career where when someone sends you a thing, they're not sending you a gift, they're sending you an assignment. And that's I got that from Andrew Edwards because he's been in this forever.
Right.
Like he was like one of the OGs. But he said that a few years ago, and that really resonated with me. Yeah. When you send me a phone, you're not sending me a gift, you're sending me an assignment. Like you need to do something with this right now. And it's like, oh, all right, fine.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, and hopefully Joe is building his channel like Screen On Time, and can check that out.
Well, I haven't at all ever really. I've sucked. But Joe, it's funny. I've actually got a device from Honor, but I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting paid or anything, and I've got some obligations to make. Make some content. Well, but it's kind of through work.
If it's your own thing, you're kind of yeah, I mean, if you're not getting paid, that's kind of a problem. But if you're building your own channel with that content, that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It's plus the obligation. I've not lifted my channel off because I've not had an obligation to make anything. So I make excuses. I've not got time. I haven't. Like last year, I bought loads of devices, loads of different devices. Did I do anything with them? No. It was quite shocking, to be honest.
Yeah, you write them off in your taxes at least.
Yeah,
they don't do it in the UK. They just pay everything. They just basically give.
That's
money.
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I have money. It is now the government's. So
right. Remember the Beatles talked about tax man? That's a UK thing. Yeah.
At least I can get hit by a car and not worry about how I'm going to pay for it.
Exactly. So, but anyway, so those are great. And like I said, and Joe, thanks for. I was kind of worried because I know he had some questions I know he wanted to ask you. So, and again, we kind of have to take this a little bit longer. And this breaks the Adam Doud School of Podcasting time because we're 45, which is fantastic because
we're way after 45 minutes. Yeah.
Right. He goes, nobody's listening. He goes, Sam, to be honest with you, nobody's listening to you after like 20. That's fine. It's okay. I didn't take it as that. I just say this in jest. But yeah, like I said, it's one of those things where if you're Joe Rogan, you can make a 3-hour podcast because you have Liam Neeson on and Bono, right?
Right.
You've got guests, right? And people really want to hear that. So we just try to keep going. And like I said, I always just appreciate anybody who's in the industry taking time at their busy day and just sharing with us. Cause like I said, again, it's not completely altruistic. I am a fan and Joe and I are both fans. So it is kind of self-serving.
Yeah,
we get to talk to
you.
So,
love you.
And we like that. And then Joe told me, he's like, yeah, I met Adam at first. I was like, God damn. I was like, I would kill just he lives in Chicago. I mean, I could just drive 4 hours to Chicago, just go visit him if I really wanted to, because he's right down the street.
I'm there's a good chance I'm going to end up in St. Louis at some point this summer. So if you want, I'll shoot you a DM.
Oh man, if you're there, I'm in. I will definitely like to meet up with you. Just if anything, just to say hi and actually have face to face. Because like I said, like I said, Joe and I are huge fans, and thanks so much for coming on and sharing.
And especially Joe, if you have any other questions, shoot me an email, DM me, whatever. I'm happy to chat.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We're at 1 hour and 30 minutes, which is basically a fantastic time to end the show. And Joe, thanks so much for getting those questions out there. Don't ever feel like, dude, please make sure you do that. I know Joe and I always struggle with trying to get manage a guest. And so thanks for doing all that. So we really appreciate that. So for myself, for Joe, for Adam Doud, thank you so much for tuning into the Nomad Tech Project with Sam and Joe. We'll be back next Sunday. Probably won't have a guest. It'll just be stuck with me and Joe. We may. It really, who knows around here? It's just kind of a free for all. That's okay. We just like it, and that's why we keep it. We keep it 100% real, and that's probably why we only have like a dozen or so followers.
But that's okay. You could cut this podcast in half, do this half this week, and then release the other half next week.
Yeah, like a little buy one get one, split it up like halvesies, 45.
Exactly.
Damn. That's why we bring Adam along. He's got all the good damn ideas.
I'm a pro, damn it. Yeah.
Right. He knows what he's doing. I just got a WoW shirt on. What the hell do I know? Anyway.
A lot of the pros, they split it into like loads of shorts as well, and they do all sorts with it.
Oh, these short things.
That's only like people that have like a staff.
Yeah. We don't have a staff. We just got Joe and his great hair. That's all we got around here.
It's not great today.
That's okay. So for myself, for Adam Doud and Joe, thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back next Sunday. Same bat time, same bat channel. And again, remember, don't forget extremeskins.co.uk. Go ahead and get some skins. Change up your phone. If you don't want to go belt sander and, don't do it with glass, folks. That's not going to work. Wood only. So, and then we have one phone currently that does that. If you've got a S25 Edge and you belt sander it, your results may vary. How about this? Just save yourself some money. Don't tear up your shit. Skin your shit. Go to extremeskins.co.uk. Get yourself some colors. And also remember, enjoy the tech. Don't be a dick. And we will see you next week on the Nomad Tech Project with Sam and Joe. For Adam, for Joe. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Have a good week. Bye everybody.
Peace.